What's up? I'm Lando Burch. I'm a future funk and disco producer in Los Angeles, and I just dropped an album called Saturn St. So I thought I'd do this series here on YouTube where I kind of go through and break down each song on the album. And today we're gonna start with one of my favorites, the first track on the album, Always Be My Sunshine. So Always Be My Sunshine is a really happy song, and I wanted to start the album with something that kind of encapsulates the good vibes and happiness that the album has. And it was also probably the first song that I made on the album back in like August or September, right when I moved to LA. It's also kind of the most stereotypical future funk, if you will, if that makes sense. I started with a sample, built house drums over it, used a ton of samples on it, and I just really like it. So let's get into the breakdown. Okay, so this is the sample I used. It's from Dynasty, Day and Night is the song title. And back in September, I was like crate digging a lot on YouTube, finding really interesting stuff that I've never heard of before, and this was one of them. I don't know how much I can show on YouTube, but I'll just play like 2 seconds. And that line right there, Always Be My Sunshine, is the title of the song. So what I did is I brought it into Logic and I chopped it up a little bit, and I just used a 4-bar loop. So this is the only thing that I used. I also pitched it up and sped it up to hit 125 BPM. I think the original was like 117. And this is the chop that I used. So for that, I just took the bass, like the ooze, and then I brought another section from a verse to end it. So it was that last bit. Right? And then I added an EQ, compressor, reverb, and then another EQ to kind of get rid of those high ends. And then I layered it with another layer of the exact same sample, but I just added more reverb on this one. So we got this. And this lower one has more low end as well on the EQ. So it made it sound more full and energetic. And that's really all I used for the sample. I do have some breakdown sections like this. And also a little like horn solo. I love using solos in my music. It does maybe use a little too much of the sample, but I don't really care. I think solos are really cool. And this is what that part sounds like. I mean, that was too good to pass up. And that's honestly about it for the sample. We'll get back into the effects later, but let's move on to the drums. Okay, so for the drums, I just did a basic 4 on the floor, just disco house drum pattern, and it sounds like this. Right, so pretty simple. The drums, or the kicks rather, is just 1, 1, 1, 1. And then I did a double clap because that's like a really easy disco technique, and it gives a little bit more life into your song. So the hi-hats was just this open on every 1/8. Just an open hat, and then I had this shuffler. And there are snares in that too, which made it a little bit harder to like break down or mix down and make it sound clean, but it worked. And then this was an actual drum loop that I started with. So when I was thinking about what drum pattern I wanted to use, this is kind of what I went off of. And I just kept it in. So all of it together sounds like. But the drums were really easy, and then for the breakdowns, I also added this ride, this open hat ride, which was a last minute thing. I actually did this like a couple weeks ago to give it a little bit more spice, a little more spicy. Right, so The drums were super simple. I don't think you need to overthink drums, and I definitely didn't in this one. Now let's get on to the other elements and melodies, guitar, whatever else I have. Now for the lead elements that I added in addition to the sample, I started with this guitar riff that I found on Splice. It's like a twang little funk thing. And it sounds really bare and raw, so what I did is I added reverb and then a delay to give it more life and to fill out more of the spaces that we're missing, so it sounds like this now. And I like that delay, and that's just using the delay designer from Logic. It's a pattern, I think. And then on top of that, I just added this pad that's like one note just to give it more of a texture on top of it, and that sounds like this. So all of my lead elements were just to add texture to it, and I kept the sample as the main lead and the main element of the song, in addition to the drums, obviously. So now the next part is more percussive elements and the miscellaneous things that I put in, and that should be the entire song. Now for the last parts of what I added to this song were these percussive elements at the bottom. And I like to keep my projects organized, so I have the sample up top, then drums, bass, and then leads, and now the extra things at the bottom. This is more drums, honestly, but it's a percussive element. So it's a drum fill, that sounds like. Just a cool do-do-do-do-do-do, just to add right before the drop on like the upbeat. And then for my crashes, I have 4 different crashes. Really just these 2 are crashes. They're cymbals that I found on Splice. And those are in every song of mine. I think mostly any song ever, they're gonna have crashes or impacts like that. But what made this one fun is I did this like sparkle effect and then a synth one shot. So when it hits, it goes, and it gives it that like really cutesy feel and like future funk style. For the uplifters, I just have this white noise, but it's got a little bit of a tremolo to it as well. And then this was a really interesting find. It sounds like the THX logo. Remember when you were a kid watching movies and that loud ass intro logo would come on? But it sounds like that reversed. It's really fun. And it's really short. So it gives it that extra little kick that we need. And then I just did a snare build. Like this was very much house or techno inspired, and then I added a fader as well to make it more smooth on the incline. And then this last little guy was a vocal shot, and it was an anime character saying hey, and that was really like the nail on the coffin for future funk. Everyone samples Japanese city pop. It's very much Japanese culture inspired, anime, whatever. So I had to add a little cherry on top like this. Hey! And that I just filled out with a lot of reverb and an EQ. So all of that together sounds like this. And that's the intro drop. And then the last little elements was this radio channel and radio static. And this, I think, could have been on YouTube or Splice. I don't really remember where I get stuff. But it's a really cool intro and a really fun, almost cliche stylistic choice. But anytime I hear this in a song, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. So I had to add it. And this is what that sounds like. And then right here is my producer tag at the end of it. And I made it sound like a transistor radio to fit the vibe. So right before it goes into the sample, you have my producer tag. And I think that's really like the perfect intro to an album. And it's fun, it's jancy, and that producer tag starting small, which you'll hear throughout the rest of the album as well. I thought that was a really fun, creative way of putting my producer tag in there. So, but that is my song, Always Be My Sunshine, the intro to Saturn St. I really like this one. It's a really fun introduction to what's to come in the album, and it's really upbeat. So I hope you enjoyed learning about how I made it. And in the next video, I'll show you how I made Decaroo featuring Strawberry Station, which is probably my favorite one on the album, to be honest. But that is about it. I'll see y'all later.